Listen to me, child of God, you've been running on empty. You've been pouring out for everybody else, praying for your family, helping your friends, holding your household together. But inside, you feel like you're running on fumes. You wake up tired, you go to bed tired, and in between, you're just existing. I came to tell you today, in the authority of the Word of God, you're not done yet. I don't care how dry your bones feel. God sent me to remind you. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Somebody in this room needs to know. You may be drained, but you are not defeated. You may be tired, but you are not finished. You may feel empty, but your cup is about to overflow, because God is about to send a wind of refreshing into your spirit. And when He breathes on you, you're gonna stand up like a warrior again. You're gonna fight again. You're gonna dream again. You're gonna believe again. See, life has a way of draining you, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. It's like every day you're giving out until you look up and realize, I've been running on the reserve tank for months. Here's the good news. God does His best work when you're at your weakest. Because when you've got nothing left to give, He steps in and says, now watch me show my power in your life. I'm talking to somebody who has cried in the bathroom so no one would see. Talking to somebody who has smiled in public but felt crushed in private. I'm talking to somebody who is tired of fighting battles no one even knows you're fighting. You've been holding it together for everybody else. Who's holding you? Let me tell you, God's been holding you all along. When you thought you were gonna lose it, He held you. When you almost quit, He kept you. When you couldn't see a way, He made a way. And He's about to pour strength back into you like you've never known before. But here's the thing. To receive His strength, you have to do something that doesn't make sense in our culture. You've got to stop fighting in your own strength and start resting in His. When you find yourself feeling completely drained, one of the most powerful steps you can take is to simply acknowledge it. Not just to yourself, but to God. We live in a world where everyone seems to be in a constant race to look strong, to appear like they have it all together, to smile even when inside they are breaking. We post pictures that look perfect. We say, I'm fine. When people ask how we're doing, we push through the exhaustion because we don't want anyone to think we're weak. But deep down, you know the truth. Your energy is gone. Your motivation has been slipping away. And even though you're still standing, you feel like you're on the edge of collapsing. Acknowledging the drain isn't about complaining or giving up. It's about being honest enough to face where you are. Imagine a phone that's running on 2% battery. You can keep using it for a while, but eventually it will shut down. Now imagine if that phone refused to connect to the charger because it wanted to prove it could keep going on its own. That's exactly what many of us do in life. We keep pushing, we keep pretending we're fine, and all the while we're spiritually, emotionally, and physically running on fumes. Admitting that you're drained is like plugging yourself back into the charger. It's saying, I can't keep doing this on my own. I need power from a greater source. Think about it. When you go to the doctor, you don't pretend to be healthy. You tell them what's wrong so they can help you. When your car runs out of fuel, you don't hide it, you pull over and refill. But when it comes to our souls, we somehow think we can hide the emptiness as if God doesn't already know exactly how tired we are. He sees the nights you lay in bed staring at the ceiling because your mind won't rest. He sees the mornings you drag yourself out of bed feeling like you never slept. He sees you showing up for everyone else, pouring out, giving, helping, listening, but rarely having a moment where someone pours back into you. Acknowledging the drain is not a sign of weakness. It's the beginning of strength. David, the great king and warrior, wrote in the Psalms, I am poured out like water. My strength is dried up. This was a man who fought battles and led armies, yet he admitted to God that he was empty. Do you know what happened? Because David admitted it, God restored him. You can't refill what you pretend is full. Sometimes we don't want to acknowledge the drain because we fear it will make us look incapable. We think people will lose respect for us if we admit we're tired. I want you to hear this. People are more inspired by your honesty than by your image. When you can say, yes, I've been worn out. Yes, been empty, but God is still keeping me. You give others permission to be real too. You show them that faith is not about pretending you never struggle. It's about trusting God to carry you through the struggle. Give you a real life example. A young mother is raising her kids, working a job, trying to keep the house in order, and still showing up for her friends. She never tells anyone she's tired. She keeps smiling, keeps baking cookies for school, keeps answering texts when people need advice. But at night, when everyone's asleep, she sits in the kitchen with her head in her hands, wondering how she's going to keep going. Now imagine that one day she kneels down and tells God, Lord, I can't do this without you. I'm exhausted. I need your strength. That simple act of honesty opens the door for His power to flow in her life. She wakes up the next day not necessarily with all her problems solved, but with a renewed peace, a fresh sense of energy, and the reminder that she's not carrying this load alone. That's what acknowledging the drain does. It shifts the weight from your shoulders to God's hands. It says, I'm not ashamed to admit I need help. And the beautiful thing about God is He never shames you for your weakness. In fact, His word says, my strength is made perfect in weakness. That means your emptiness isn't the end. It's the space where His power begins to work the most. Sometimes we confuse endurance with denial. Endurance is pressing on even when it's hard, but denial is pretending it's not hard. God doesn't need your denial. He needs your truth. He needs you to come to Him the way you really are, not the way you think you're supposed to be. You might say, but I'm supposed to be the strong one in my family. Yes, but even strong people need rest. Even Jesus, who healed the sick and raised the dead, took time to go to the mountain alone and pray. If the Son of God Himself needed moments to recharge, why do we think we can run non-stop without breaking? Today, I challenge you to take off the mask, not for the world, but for your Creator. Tell Him where it hurts. Tell Him where you're weary. Tell Him you've been carrying too much for too long. Because the moment you admit it, you give Him permission to step in and strengthen you. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't fight every battle in your own strength. You can always come to the one who never runs out of power, who never gets tired, and who is ready right now to breathe new life into you. Acknowledging the drain is the first step toward being refilled. And when you're refilled by God, you're not just restored to where you were. You're filled to overflow, ready to live, give, and love again from a place of divine strength. When you're feeling drained, it's easy to lose sight of the promises God has made over your life. In those moments, your mind becomes a battlefield. The weariness makes you believe this season will last forever, that the heaviness you feel is permanent. The energy and joy you once had will never return. But I want you to hear this clearly. Exhaustion is temporary, but God's promises are eternal. The Word of God does not change based on how you feel. Whether you're standing tall or barely crawling, His promises are still standing strong. Think about it. The same God who spoke the universe into existence, the same God who parted the Red Sea, the same God who brought water from a rock, is the same God who has promised to renew your strength when you wait on Him. That's not poetic language. That's a guarantee from the Creator Himself. When He says, you shall renew your strength, He's not saying maybe. He's not saying if you're lucky. He's not saying if you're perfect. He's saying it will happen if you trust Him. The problem is when we're in the middle of feeling tired and discouraged, we forget what He has spoken. We start magnifying the problem instead of magnifying His promise. We start talking more about our exhaustion than about His ability to restore us. But faith flips the script. Faith says, I may be tired right now. This is not how my story ends. God has promised to strengthen me, and I will see that promise fulfilled. Let's bring it to daily life. Imagine someone training for a marathon. On the 15th mile, their legs are aching, their lungs are burning, and everything in them says, stop. But they remember the goal. They remember the finish line they've been dreaming of. They remember the people who are waiting to cheer them on at the end. That vision of the promise keeps them moving forward. Your life is the same way. Right now, you might be in your 15-mile. You might be in the stretch where everything feels hard. If you'll keep your eyes on God's promise instead of your present pain, you'll find the strength to take one more step and then another till you cross the line into victory. And here's the beautiful thing. God's promises aren't just about getting through. They're about being transformed in the process. When he says he will renew your strength, it means you won't just get back to where you were before you got tired. You'll come out stronger, wiser, and more resilient than before. An athlete who trains for resistance, the process of waiting on his promise builds you in ways you can't see while you're in it. There's a story in the Bible about Elijah, the prophet of God, who reached a point where he was so tired, so drained that he prayed, "Lord, take my life." He had just come from a great victory, but the weight of fear and exhaustion hit him so hard that he wanted to give up. And what did God do? He didn't rebuke Elijah for feeling that way. He sent an angel to feed him and let him rest. Then he gave him the strength to continue his journey. That's a promise in action. God didn't just say, "Elijah, you'll be fine." He actively stepped in to provide exactly what Elijah needed to keep going. That's what God does for you. He meets you where you are with the exact kind of strength you need for the next step. Sometimes the way God fulfills his promise of renewing your strength doesn't look dramatic. It might not be a lightning bolt moment where you suddenly feel unstoppable. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's waking up with just enough hope to get out of bed. Sometimes it's the right word from a friend at just the right time. Sometimes it's a song on the radio that reminds you you're not alone. That's still his promise at work. Strength doesn't always come in a flood. Sometimes it comes in a steady drip that fills you up day by day until one day you realize you're not running on empty anymore. You might say, "But I've been waiting for so long." And I understand that. Waiting can be hard, especially when you're tired. Let me tell you, waiting on God is not passive. It's not sitting around doing nothing. It's trusting, it's praying, it's worshiping, declaring his word over your life, even when you don't see it yet. Waiting is an act of faith, and faith always gets God's attention. Remember this, your weariness doesn't cancel his word. Your exhaustion doesn't erase his promise. In fact, promise shines even brighter when it's fulfilled in your weakest moment, because then you know it was his power, not yours, that carried you through. The enemy wants you to think your tired season means God has forgotten you. But the truth is, your tired season is the perfect setup for God to show himself strong in your life. So lift your head, wipe your tears, remind yourself out loud, God has promised to renew my strength. Say it until it becomes more real to you than your fatigue. Say it until your heart believes it. And watch as little by little you begin to feel that promise taking root inside you. This season will pass. The energy will return. The joy will rise again. And when it does, you'll look back and realize every step, every tear, every prayer in your weakest moment was proof that God's promises were holding you even when you couldn't hold yourself. And that, my friend, will give you the courage to face the next challenge with a deeper, unshakable faith. There comes a moment in every believer's life when you realize that no matter how hard you push, no matter how much you plan, no matter how strong you think you are, you simply cannot do it all in your own strength. You've been carrying burdens on your shoulders that were never meant to be yours alone. You've been trying to hold your whole world together with your own two hands, and now those hands are trembling from the weight. You've been relying on your own abilities, your own energy, your own resources, and it's left you exhausted. Here's the truth that changes everything. You were never meant to live self-reliant. You were meant to live God-reliant. Shifting from self-reliance to God. Reliance is not just a spiritual idea. It's a daily decision. It's the moment you stop saying, "I've got this all under control," and start saying, "Lord, I need you to take control." It's letting go of the illusion that you can handle every challenge by yourself and embracing the reality that you have access to a limitless source of strength, wisdom, and provision through Him. Let's be honest. We're taught from a young age that independence is a sign of maturity. We're told to stand on your own 2 feet, don't depend on anyone, and be strong. And there's nothing wrong with responsibility or hard work. Somewhere along the way, we start believing the lie that needing help is weakness. We start believing that asking God for strength means we've failed. The opposite is true. Depending on God is the greatest sign of maturity you can have. It shows you understand that your strength has limits. His strength has none. Think of it like a child learning to walk. At first, they stumble and fall, but when they take their parent's hand, they walk further and steadier than they could on their own. The parent doesn't think less of the child for needing their hand. They're delighted to help. That's how God sees you. He's not disappointed when you lean on Him. He's overjoyed. He's been extending His hand to you all along, waiting for you to take it so He can guide you through the steps you can't manage on your own. I remember hearing a story about a man who tried to push his broken down car up a hill by himself. He strained and sweated, muscles aching, barely making it a few feet. A friend passed by and offered to help, but the man refused, saying, "I've got it." Minutes later, exhausted and getting nowhere, he finally accepted the help, and with the two of them pushing together, the car moved with ease. That's what happens when we keep trying to push through life in our own power. We make it harder than it needs to be because we won't let God in. But the moment we do, the weight shifts, the burden lightens, and suddenly the impossible becomes possible. Even Jesus, the Son of God, lived in complete dependence on His Father. He said, "I do nothing on my own but speak just what the Father has taught me." If Jesus Himself relied fully on God, why do we think we should do any less? When you rely on yourself alone, you operate on limited strength, limited wisdom, limited vision. But when you rely on God, you tap into His unlimited strength, His infinite wisdom, His eternal vision. Daily life is full of moments where this shift can change everything. Maybe you're in a season where you're juggling work, family, finances, and personal struggles all at once. You wake up in the morning already feeling the pressure of the day ahead. Instead of starting your day with stress and self-reliance, what if you began by saying, "Lord, I can't do this without you. I give you my schedule, my energy, my thoughts, my words. Fill me with your strength today." That simple shift sets a completely different tone for your day. You go from feeling alone to knowing you're walking with the one who can carry you through anything. It also means you stop fighting battles that aren't yours to fight. Some of the exhaustion you feel isn't because you're doing too much. It's because you're doing things God never asked you to do. You've been trying to fix people, change circumstances, open doors that only God can open. When you rely on Him, you learn to step back and let Him be God. You do your part, but you trust Him to do the rest. I challenge here's what happens when you make this shift. The pressure lifts. You stop feeling like you have to have all the answers. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can endure on your own. You start seeing God's hand in the little things, and you realize you were never truly alone. You start experiencing the peace that comes from knowing you're covered by the one who never sleeps, never gets tired, and never fails. Picture this, you're in the middle of a storm at sea, waves crashing, wind howling. You've been rowing with all your strength, but you're not getting anywhere. Then you notice a sail in the boat. It's been there the whole time. You haven't used it. The moment you lift that sail, the wind takes over, and you start moving effortlessly. That's what it's like to rely on God. Your effort still matters, but His power carries you further than you could ever go on your own. Self-reliance will wear you out. God-reliance will lift you up. And when you finally shift your weight onto Him, you'll wonder why you didn't do it sooner. Because life was never meant to be carried in your own strength. It was meant to be lived in His. Refueling through His presence is one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked, ways to find strength when you feel drained. Too many times, we think strength comes only from sleeping longer, taking a break, or going on vacation. And while rest for the body is important, there's a deeper kind of rest and renewal that your soul desperately needs. And that can only be found in the presence of God. You can lie in bed for 10 hours and still wake up tired if your spirit is empty. But one moment in His presence can refresh you in a way no amount of physical rest ever could. The presence of God is not just a religious idea. It's a real, tangible place for your spirit to recharge. It's the space where worry begins to lose its grip, where the noise of the world fades, where your heart starts to remember who God is and who you are in Him. When you step into His presence, through worship prayer, reading His word, even silent surrender, you are plugging your drained soul into the ultimate power source. Think of your life like a smartphone. Every day you use it, making calls, running apps, scrolling, taking pictures, and the battery gets lower and lower. No matter how advanced the phone is, if you don't connect it to a charger, it will eventually shut down. In the same way, you can have talents, skills, ambition, and even good intentions. If you don't regularly connect to God's presence, your spiritual battery will run out. His presence is your charger. And here's the good news. Unlike your phone's charger, His presence is never misplaced, never broken, and never out of reach. Daily life gives us endless reasons to feel drained. Deadlines at work, tension in relationships, financial pressures, health issues. These things slowly take from you. But His presence gives to you. It fills you back up with peace when anxiety has emptied you, with hope when disappointment has drained you, with joy when sadness has weighed you down. There's a beautiful example of this in the story of Mary and Martha. Martha was busy cooking, cleaning, serving. She was running around trying to make everything perfect for Jesus' visit. Meanwhile, Mary sat at His feet, listening to His words, soaking in His presence. Martha was frustrated, thinking Mary was being lazy. But Jesus told her, Mary has chosen what is better. It will not be taken away from her. That's the power of His presence. When you choose it, you receive something that can never be taken from you. So many of us are like Martha, busy, rushing, constantly doing, thinking we'll feel better when we finish just one more thing. But the truth is, we won't be strengthened by doing more. We'll be strengthened by sitting more, sitting in His presence, resting in His word, worshiping Him with no agenda, but to be close to Him. Imagine this in your daily routine. Instead of grabbing your phone first thing in the morning, you take 5 minutes to close your eyes and say, Lord, I give you this day. Fill me with your peace and your wisdom. Or during your lunch break, instead of scrolling through social media, you listen to a worship song that lifts your spirit. Or before you go to bed, you open the Bible and let His words be the last thing your mind hears before you sleep. These small, intentional moments in His presence can change your entire atmosphere. When you enter His presence, you start to see your problems differently. They may not disappear instantly, but they stop looking so big compared to His greatness. You begin to feel a quiet strength rising in you, the kind that doesn't come from adrenaline or willpower, but from knowing the Almighty is with you. Presence reminds you that you're not fighting alone, that you're covered, that your life is in the hands of someone who never fails. Here's the amazing thing. You don't have to be in a church building to experience His presence. You can meet Him in your kitchen while washing dishes, in your car while driving to work, in your living room while sitting in silence. God's presence isn't limited to a location. It's accessed through a willing heart. When you turn your attention to Him, even for a moment, you'll find He's already there, waiting to strengthen you. I've heard people say, I don't have time for prayer or worship. But the truth is, you don't have time not to. The more drained you feel, the more you need that connection. Without it, you'll keep trying to run on empty and wondering why life feels so heavy. With it, you'll find a strength that doesn't make sense to the world, a peace that shows up in chaos, a joy that stands in sorrow, that keeps you moving forward. Refueling through His presence is not about being super spiritual or knowing the perfect words to pray. It's about showing up before God exactly as you are, tired, stressed, maybe even broken, and letting Him do the work of restoration. It's about saying, Lord, I'm here. I need you. Fill me again. And when you make that your lifestyle, you'll find you don't burn out so easily because you won't be living off yesterday's strength. You'll be living on today's fresh supply from the one who never runs out. When you learn to refuel in his presence, you stop living life on a low battery. You walk through your days with a quiet confidence, knowing you are connected to the source of all strength, all wisdom, and all power. That connection changes everything. Speaking life over yourself is one of the most overlooked yet powerful tools God has given you. The words you speak are not just sounds in the air, they are seeds you plant in your mind and spirit. Every word carries weight. Every declaration shapes your reality. When you're drained and weary, it's easy to let your mouth follow your feelings. You start saying things like, I'm so tired, I can't do this anymore. Nothing ever works out for me. Those words may feel harmless in the moment. They begin to take root, and before long, they shape the way you think, the way you act, and the way you see yourself. The Bible says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. That means what you speak today is the harvest you will live in tomorrow. If you want to see strength, peace, breakthrough in your life, you have to start planting words that align with God's truth, not your temporary feelings. Speaking life is not about denying reality, it's about declaring a greater reality. Imagine a gardener planting seeds. If they want roses, they plant rose seeds. If they want apples, they plant apple seeds. They don't stand there complaining about the empty ground, saying, nothing ever grows here. They plant what they want to see. Your words work the same way. If you want to see strength, you plant words of strength. If you want joy, you speak joy. If you want to see victory, you speak victory. Look at Jesus in the wilderness. After fasting for 40 days, he was physically drained and the enemy came to tempt him. But every time Jesus responded with, it is written, he didn't let the enemy's words shape his reality. He spoke God's truth over the situation. That's how you fight when you're tired, not with your own opinions, but with God's word coming out of your mouth. Let's bring it into everyday life. Maybe you wake up on Monday morning and you already feel the weight of the week pressing on you. Instead of saying, this week is going to drain me, you declare, this week I am strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. I have the energy, wisdom, peace I need for everything ahead. Or when you're facing a challenge that makes you want to say, I can't handle this, you shift your words to, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's not just positive thinking, it's powerful, faith-filled speaking. The truth is, your mind listens to your mouth. What you speak out loud reinforces what you believe on the inside. When you constantly speak defeat, your mind starts to accept defeat as the only option. But when you consistently speak life, your mind begins to expect victory even in hard seasons. This doesn't mean you'll never feel tired or scared, discouraged, but it means you won't let those feelings dictate your future. Think of an athlete in the middle of a tough game. Their body might be screaming for them to stop, but they keep telling themselves, I can do this. One more play, one more push. Those words don't magically remove the pain, but they ignite something inside that keeps them moving forward. In the same way, when life is pressing you, speaking life over yourself can be the difference between giving up and pushing through. Speaking life also means aligning your words with God's promises, not your fears. If God says you are more than a conqueror, your words should sound like victory, not defeat. If he says his joy is your strength, then your words should reflect that joy. Even when circumstances try to steal it, sometimes speaking life is a conscious act of defiance against what you see and feel. You might be surrounded by problems, but you say, I am blessed. You might feel weak, but you declare, I am strong in the Lord. You might feel like quitting, but you speak, I will finish the race set before me. These declarations are not just for show, they're for survival. They remind your spirit that you serve a God who has the final say. There's power in speaking life, not just once, but continually. You don't water a plant once and expect it to grow. You water it regularly. In the same way, you need to water your life with words of truth and encouragement daily. Over time, those words will build resilience in you And you'll notice that even when challenges come, you bounce back quicker because you've trained yourself to speak life. And remember, speaking life over yourself doesn't mean ignoring the help you need from God. In fact, it works hand in hand with His power. When you speak His word, you are agreeing with Him. You are inviting His promises to take root in your life, and He honors His word. That means when you say, I am healed, you are agreeing with the healer. When you say, I am provided for, you are agreeing with the provider. You have the ability to change the atmosphere of your life with your words. Your job may not change tomorrow. Your circumstances may not shift overnight. The moment you start speaking life, something inside you changes. And when what's inside you changes, it's only a matter of time before what's around you does too. So even when you feel drained, keep speaking life. Speak it in the morning before you step into your day. Speak it in the middle of the storm when it feels like nothing is moving. Speak it at night when you're tempted to go to bed discouraged. Your words today are building the strength you'll need tomorrow. And when you look back, you'll see that every declaration of life was like a step toward your breakthrough. ChatGPT said sometimes the greatest strength God gives you is not in removing the problem, but in giving you the endurance to go through it without breaking. We often imagine God's help as a miraculous intervention that instantly changes everything around us. The sickness is gone, the debt is paid, the relationship is restored overnight, but more often than not, God strengthens us from the inside first. He plants courage in a trembling heart, peace in a chaotic mind, and hope in the middle of what feels like a hopeless situation. It's like a tree in the middle of a storm. The wind may be strong, the rain may be heavy, but God deepens your roots so that you can stand tall even when the atmosphere around you is trying to tear you down. Think about the times you wanted to quit, the mornings you woke up and didn't want to face the day, the moments when you felt completely empty, nothing left to give. Yet somehow you kept going. You might not have realized it at the time, but that was God's strength carrying you. The fact that you are still standing after everything you've been through is not because you had all the answers or because you were the strongest person in the room. It's because God was pouring strength into you drop by drop, moment by moment. Endurance is a quiet kind of strength. It doesn't always get applause or recognition. People don't see the battles you fight in silence, the tears you wipe away when no one's looking, or the prayers you whisper when your voice is breaking. But God sees. He sees every act of faith you've made when you could have walked away. He sees every time you chose to forgive when you wanted to hold on to bitterness. He sees the moments you kept showing up when you didn't feel like it. And He is using those moments to build something unshakable inside you. Sometimes God doesn't remove the storm because He's teaching you how to navigate in the rain. Sometimes He doesn't take away the mountain because He's building the muscles you'll need for the climb. And sometimes He doesn't stop the fire because He's refining you into gold. It's not that He doesn't care. It's that He cares too much to leave you weak. He knows that easy victories don't make strong warriors. And you, my friend, are being shaped into a warrior who can face anything life throws at you. If you've ever gone through a season of waiting for the healing, waiting for the breakthrough, waiting for the answer, you know how exhausting it can feel. But endurance is born in the waiting room. Faith grows in the space between the prayer and the answer. Every day you choose to keep believing even when nothing changes on the outside, your inner strength is growing. And one day you'll look back and realize that the very thing you thought was breaking you was actually building you. God's strength doesn't always look like a sudden burst of energy. Sometimes it's a gentle whisper that says, just take the next step. It's the quiet confidence that no matter what happens, you're not alone. It's the reminder that even in the valley, His rod and staff are guiding and protecting you. You may not have all the resources, all the help, or all the answers. You have the one who holds all power walking beside you. And that's enough. So if you feel like you're barely holding on, know this, you're not holding on by your own strength. You're being held by God's strength. That's why you haven't collapsed. That's why you haven't been crushed. That's why you're still here. And when the time is right, you will see the fruit of this endurance. You will see how God took what was meant to break you and used it to make you stronger, wiser, and more unshakable than ever before. Your endurance is not wasted. Your pain is not wasted. Your perseverance is producing something in you that you will carry for the rest of your life. When the next storm comes, because storms will come, you will find yourself standing taller, rooted deeper, trusting God more than you ever thought possible. That's the kind of strength He's giving you right now. Strength that doesn't just survive the season, but transforms you through it. Sometimes God will allow you to come to the very end of yourself, not to break you, but to show you where your true strength comes from. There are seasons when you look around and realize you've done everything you know how to do, prayed every prayer, fought every battle, given all the love you could give, tried every possible solution, and still nothing seems to be changing. It's in those moments you feel the weight of exhaustion deep in your bones. You don't just feel tired, you feel empty. It's not just your body that's weary, it's your soul. And that's when the enemy whispers, you can't keep going. This is the end. But what the enemy doesn't understand is that your weakness is not the end. It's an invitation for God's power to step in. You see, when you're at your lowest, you are standing in the perfect position for a divine exchange. This is where your human strength gives way to supernatural strength. Think about it. If you always had the ability, you would never need the anointing. If you always had the solution, you would never seek the Savior. Sometimes God will let you come to the edge of your own capacity so you will see His hand move in ways you couldn't imagine. It's like when a runner reaches the point in a marathon they call hitting the wall. Physically, they feel like they can't take another step. Every muscle is screaming, every breath feels heavier than the last, and their mind starts to tell them to quit. But right in that breaking point, something incredible can happen. The body releases reserves of energy it had been holding back for survival. It's as if new strength is unlocked that was hidden all along. In the spiritual race of life, God is that source of hidden strength. And you hit the wall. In your faith journey, you don't collapse, you lean on the one who runs with you. Think of David. Before he became king, he spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves, fighting battles that were not of his making. There must have been nights when he felt utterly drained mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And yet in Psalm 18 and 32, he says, "It is God who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect." He wasn't relying on his skill with a sling or his leadership ability. He was relying on divine reinforcement. When you feel drained, God doesn't just give you a little energy boost like a cup of coffee on a Monday morning. He pours living water into your dry places until they overflow. He renews you in such a way that you don't just get back to where you were before. You come back stronger, wiser, and more resilient. You begin to realize that the moments you thought were going to destroy, you were actually training grounds for the strength you now carry. We live in a world that glorifies self-reliance. Push harder, grind longer, never show weakness. But in the kingdom of God, your weakness is not a liability. It's a doorway for His glory. When Paul prayed for God to remove his thorn, the answer wasn't removal. It was grace. God told him, "My strength is made perfect in weakness." That means your tired seasons are not wasted seasons. They are opportunities for God's power to shine through you. Maybe right now you feel like the flame inside you is barely flickering. You're wondering how you'll make it another day, let alone through this entire season. Let me remind you, God is not asking you to run this race on your own stamina. He's the one who carried Elijah 40 days on the strength of one meal. He's the one who empowered Gideon's small army to defeat thousands. He's the one who caused the walls of Jericho to fall, not because of military might, but because of obedient faith. You might not see the breakthrough yet. Don't confuse the silence of God with the absence of God. While you rest in Him, He is working behind the scenes, rearranging, restoring, and renewing. When He strengthens you, it won't just be enough to survive. It will be enough to thrive. And when people look at you later and ask, "How did you make it through that?" You'll smile and say, "Wasn't me, it was God in me." This is your moment to stop striving in your own power and start drawing from His. Because when God strengthens you, you don't just walk, you run and not grow weary. You don't just endure, you rise on wings like eagles. You're not barely making it, you're living proof that His power is real. Sometimes life feels like a race you didn't sign up for. You start strong, full of energy, full of faith, full of dreams, but somewhere along the way, the road gets longer than you expected. The challenges become heavier than you imagined. You look around, and it feels like everyone else is running faster while you're dragging your feet. Your spirit feels tired. Your mind feels cluttered. Your heart feels worn out. You've prayed, you believe, but deep down you're asking yourself, do I have anything left to give? This is the moment where many people think it's over. But what they don't realize is that these are the very moments God specializes in. When you feel empty, He is ready to fill you up. When you feel weak, He is ready to strengthen you. Think about a phone battery. When it's drained to 1%, it can't function the way it was designed to. You can have the best apps, the most advanced technology, the best camera, but if the battery is dead, it's useless. That's exactly how we are spiritually. We can have dreams, talent, and skills, but if our inner battery, our faith, our hope, our courage is drained, we can't function at our full capacity. The beautiful thing is God has a charging station for your soul. His word is a charger. His presence is a charger. Prayer is a charger. Worship is a charger. You might have been running on low for a long time, but today God is saying, "Come close to me and I will recharge you." Sometimes God allows us to come to the end of our own strength so that we learn to rely on His. You've been trying to hold everything together on your own, your career, your family, your relationships, and that constant pressure can make you feel drained. But when you stop trying to be the source and instead connect to the source, everything changes. It's like plugging into a power supply that never runs out. God doesn't just give you enough strength to crawl through the day. He renews your strength so you can soar like an eagle. Daily life gives us so many examples of this. Think of a runner in a marathon. Somewhere in the middle of the race, their body feels like quitting. But then they reach a hydration station, grab some water, take a breath, and keep going. That's what God does in your life. He places hydration stations along your journey, moments of encouragement, people who speak life into you, verses that speak directly to your situation, just enough to keep you going until you reach the finish line. Maybe you've been facing a season of loneliness. Maybe every prayer feels like it's bouncing off the ceiling. Maybe you've been smiling in public but crying in private. I want you to hear this. You are not invisible to God. He sees your weariness. He hears the prayers you can't even put into words. Just like a loving father who sees his child struggling, He will pick you up, carry you, and strengthen you in ways you didn't even know you needed. Strength from God doesn't always come in a lightning bolt moment. Sometimes it's in the small, quiet ways. A peace that makes no sense. A sudden reminder that you're loved, a solution to a problem you've been stressing over. Sometimes He strengthens you not by removing the storm, by making you stronger in the storm. You may still face challenges, but they won't crush you anymore. You may still walk through fire. You won't be burned. So if you feel drained today, don't see it as the end. See it as a sign that God is about to pour fresh oil into your spirit. Your weakness is not a limitation. It's an invitation for God to show His power. The same God who strengthened David to face Goliath, the same God who gave Moses courage to face Pharaoh, the same God who lifted Peter after he fell in the water is the same God who is about to strengthen you. This is your rechargement. This is your spiritual revival. Take a breath. Lift your head. The God who never sleeps and never runs out of power is about to renew you from the inside out. You may have walked in here drained, but you will walk out filled.